Let's move on to student matters now, because Wits University student leadership has finally met with management in a bid to resolve their grievances. Now, it follows days of intense protests over a number of issues, including accommodation as well as outstanding debt.
The SRC says it will give feedback to students this evening. At the same time, a committee has now been established to look into solutions to help students affected by the 45,000 Rand NSFAS accommodation cap. Let's get an update from our reporter, Pule Letshwiti-Jones. Pule, good morning to you. Last night's meeting, any positive outcomes?
Well, the meeting ended just around 7:30. It started at 1 p.m. Of course, Wits SRC, and of course representatives from the political structures within the institution and the management being, deadlocked into a meeting, trying to solve or pave a way forward as to how they can put an end to the protests that have been taking place for quite some time right now. And we now understand that there were promises that were made by the institution, and this of course is coming from the SRC saying that yet they could not reach conclusion to some of the commitments that had to be adhered to by the management. Of course, this speaking to their demands as well, like you've rightfully said, a 45,000 Rand NSFAS accommodation cap as well, amongst the issue of scrapping the historical debts of students who still owe the institution fees as well. So today they were expected to address the students. We were told that there will be a mass meeting that starts at 8 a.m. But I've tried to get hold of almost all of them. The phones are off, so you can imagine maybe some of the students are still quite fatigued from this week as well, how busy it was. But we just anticipating that meeting that will be taking place, because that's where they will outline some of the ideas and way forward as to what happens from tomorrow going on throughout the whole week, because there were threats that if the management does not meet their demands, they would be joining forces with other universities in the city of Johannesburg, including UJ.
Yeah. Well, there's also been conversations, and we even had this one with the South African Union of Students representative, Asive Dlandra, saying that also this is a clear demonstration of the failure of the Department of Higher Education to best be able to integrate and to find symmetry and cohesiveness on how the department conducts its affairs, that there seems to be a disconnect between NSFAS, the Department of Higher Education, as well as what is due to students and at what point in time. What has been the official response coming in from the Department of Higher Education? Because ultimately, this is not just about Wits. This extends way beyond Wits. This is about other institutions of higher learning where you've got disgruntled students seeking accommodation, saying affordability of schooling becomes the big topic of conversation once again, unnecessarily so.
Yeah. It's still quite problematic. I mean, year in, year out, you see this protest actually happening. And of course, this also built on the back of what the former president had said before, former President Jacob Zuma saying education must be free as well. And that's really the bone of contention here, where students keep referring to those statements that were made by the former president, saying that it is something that should happen. But there seems to be a bit of a disconnection or miscommunication as well coming from NSFAS and, of course, the Higher Education Department, who previously had pledged that this NSFAS would be assisting students as well. But we're seeing different dynamics unfolding here as well, because students are complaining that the money which is allocated to them by the NSFAS isn't enough, because at some point they also have to bridge the amount NSFAS is giving them with their own personal costs. For example, if you say the cap is 45,000 Rand, NSFAS only pays for 10 months in a year. So put yourself in the shoes of the student and imagine you have to pay 4,500 Rand per month, and rent is not that cheap. Rent probably ranges from about 6,500 Rand, and these are accredited accommodation places with NSFAS. So it means you'd have to fork out more, to the tune of about 1,000 going up as well, to meet the rent and pay the rent. And these are some of the issues that they're raising. But no word yet from the higher education, learning and training as well. They have seen, of course, these protests taking place throughout national television, and we're hoping to see whether there will be a press briefing whatsoever to give a way forward as to how this issue can be resolved.
Now, that feedback that, of course, the leadership at Wits SRC is going to be taking back to the students, are we expecting that to be what determines whether or not the strike continues? And, on top of that, the partnership and the coming of the University of Johannesburg, for example, in here, are they too then waiting for the feedback to be delivered to the students at Wits for them to also know whether or not they are still going ahead with their assistance in the strike?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the meeting that took place last night was very crucial in the sense that it'll determine how things around the country actually get underway as well. Because if the Wits management could meet the demands or some of the demands of the SRC committee as well, it will mean that other institutions where the SRC is also lively there would then present the same demands to the bodies, stakeholders or management of those various institutions to say, if this can happen at Wits University, so can it happen at this institution. Because you'd remember just last week as well, the University of Johannesburg, we were told a group of students were actually also embarking on a protest to try and ensure that the institution can come around the table and listen to their demands as well. So it'll be interesting to hear what the students are told today during that mass meeting, because we're told whatever the outcome of what happened last night will determine the way forward starting from tomorrow throughout the whole week.
We'll leave it there for this morning. Thank you so much. I know that you're going to be covering this for us throughout the day. Much appreciated. Our reporter there just giving us the latest there in terms of that student protest there, specifically happening at Wits University.